Hello, everyone. Welcome to this LinkedIn Live. My name is Catherine and I'm from the Business of Data team. We're coming to you fairly early for our usual weekly LinkedIn Live for our podcast because very excitingly, we have our advisory board launch later today. So we wanted to make sure you still got to see the podcast ahead of it. So that's why we're a little bit earlier than usual. Now, as some of you will know, as part of our Business of Data podcast, we do live stream each episode ahead of hosting it on our Business of Data platform. And of course, all of our wonderful podcast providers like Apple, Google, and Spotify as well. Now, this is a chance we'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, questions. Please do share those in the comments. We always love reading those after the stream as well. And don't forget, if you would like to appear as a guest, just pop a message or email me. I would love to hear from you. But for now, let's tune into today's episode. Hello and welcome to the Business of Data podcast. My name is Catherine King and I'll be your host. Welcome to season 3. It's absolutely lovely to have you joining us. In this series, we will be talking to executives and thought leaders from a range of industries, departments and functions, all about their passions, experiences and challenges within data and analytics. Let's go ahead and dive straight into today's episode. Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the Business of Data podcast. This week we're putting science into data science, specifically how to work with new scientific and data testing to acquire of risk. Now, to do just that, we have brought in the lovely Dan Marzuk of data science for Ageas Insurance. Now, if you haven't had the pleasure of meeting Dan before, just a few intro facts for you. Now, Dan has been the Senior Vice President of Data Science since late last year. Before that, Dan held roles in Chubb, New Tech Business Services and Edward E. Now, if you can't find him at his work desk, you'll find him one of 3 places, either at the grill cooking up a complete store, or spending time with his children. Dan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Catherine. It's wonderful to be here.
Now, I've got to start with my nosy question first, as is the BoD Pod tradition. Now, you have a range of ages in your family, right, Dan? So to know what you've been doing to keep everyone entertained and occupied.
If I could keep them all occupied all the time, I have 4 kids. I have 2 18-year-olds, a 13-year-old, and an 11-year-old. So thankfully, older are self-sufficient, and the younger ones have been a handful trying Zoom school going, but fortunately they are regular classes every day now. Mm-hmm. So we are excited about that. Given that my wife is also an ICU nurse, and I've been especially busy.
Yeah.
We're all doing well.
Super. And you're actually enjoying a snow day, I believe, are you not?
We are. We actually had a snow day yesterday, and we received about 8 to 10 inches of snow. We actually had a snow day off with Zoom school. Wonderful,
awesome
present to our kids. We were able to shovel snow, have a little bit of a snowball fight. It was really a great day. And hot chocolate, of course.
Wonderful. Well, let's get into it. And I mean, be talking about it in a little while as well. So it's interesting that you're enjoying this. So let's start out by kind of setting this. I'd love for you to talk me through the challenges, accuracy in the insurance industry, and would you tell me what to say other industries?
So the data on the insurance industry and the data are to sort of keep really are broken down into a couple different. The insurance industry has a unique reporting requirement to a number of states called statistical reporting, which require us to keep in track of data. That data is what I'm going to call, it's a required data, but it's also more importantly, it's data that we're collecting, but have not utilized to the best of our abilities. And rating agents that data, but internally, insurance companies have shied from utilizing that data to do. The second piece of the data kind of algorithm pieces is so data that, for example, very much like to know everything about a risk, but we also don't want our underwriters to have data. So we've got to figure out a way to collect on the average risk, most insurance between 30 and 40,000 of data.
Yeah.
That's just way too much for any individual to and turn into something that is useful.
Being overwhelmed with data is certainly something that I'm hearing more and more, that the scales have tipped from wanting to be data driven and trying to access that data and have hands on it, but now it's actually the other extreme where we are collecting so much that actually the phrase "you can't see the wood for the mind" for it. Now, something else that's kind of arisen over 2020 and now kind of looking into 2021 is that data teams saw a huge increase internally for demand in data and analytics. Is that something that you saw as well?
So there's definitely the collection of the data hasn't changed all that much. Given that we've collected a significant amount of previous policy data, the utilization of that data is working toward a change. Insurance is one of those strange fields that you think about it. Let's say that you have 10 people and the work that you put together to provide quotes for those 10 individuals is the same. We only may earn the business of 2. So really, there's a piece of data that comes before the actual risk, so the risk portion, which is how do we better get that number up to 4 or 5? Because when looking at data, everyone thinks about loss, which is true.
Yeah.
But there's marketing data that's just as important, because if we earn the business for 3 out of 10, that means time, in theory, was wasted. Or did, but was non-revenue generated. That's a really big sort of shift on a data perspective. Is that one field that you don't know what that actual cost is. If I'm a data center and I'm charging per gigabyte or terabyte of data, the company grows, I know exactly how much money. If I'm a store and I pick up 5 products and I sell 5 products, I know exactly what those 5 products cost me. In insurance, I don't know that. I don't know if you're going to be involved in an accident, if your building is going to burn down, or if someone is going to slip and fall on your sidewalk. And my cost could be infinite.
Yeah.
And so couple the two together, that I've got the customers that I've spent time on that were non-revenue generating because I didn't earn their business. I've got this unknown cost, and you put those together and you say, where do I focus my data? Do I focus on everything to really make a profit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the value in data and that kind of area, I wonder if you can talk us through the challenges that you're currently working through, sources of data that you receive, understanding that risk.
So from a source perspective, I guess 3 basic neighborhoods that we receive data from.
Mm.
The first is from the application from the considering that we are primarily focused on commercial businesses, and therefore there may not be as much of a data for a commercial business that provides us with all the details that we require to make sure that risk fits into our, we may know that they're a convenience store, but we may not quite understand because have a website, the small local bodegas and such. Therefore, we don't exactly know what they're selling. Are they selling oils? Are they selling storage in the back? That they're selling beer and wine? So some of that has to be a perspective from the agent and or the customer. Second, that's the second piece is external data that we can collect. Right. We can collect data points about the weather risks, about the building. We can pull records fairly easily right now through APIs, and so that's the first data that we absolutely are probably most likely are not going to be able to find. As publicly accessible. And that third piece of that is really important is really sort of what makes them tick, what makes them different, what's unique in some way. You think about a small thing and the ownership and are intricately involved in the day-to-day operation. They have a vested interest in keeping that operation safe. You go into the medium-sized business and there's a little bit more absentee. And the bonuses / revenue share with the management team doesn't have a focus on risk management. So you sort of have to figure that out. And then businesses which have risk managers and teams, and how you utilize that portion to protect your three pieces of data that three groups as I call it. Okay, what do we hear? What do we do if the data doesn't match? Things don't line up, and inconsistencies. And so that's our biggest sort of realm that we're really looking at.
Hearing you explain that, it almost feels like a risk puzzle that you're putting together, and actually you're piecing together the various different and building that picture, and how just one piece can really dramatically impact it. Because I'd never even thought of, like you say, the different civilizations and actually how they look at their own risk. As quite rightly say, the small business owner is probably going to really care in the business. Different dynamic to the larger where it's more of a profession in risk management. So it's really interesting. Now, as you can probably tell, from very keen on this episode to really pick your brain on the challenge that you are working through, and to understand perhaps how they can approach the challenges. Now, I'd love to know pitfalls are with using third-party data in insurance and this risk management. How do you deal with those?
So similar to, I'll compare the challenges similar to a Google review, to a Yelp review, to a Facebook review for a business. Each of those businesses have their pros and cons. Each of our pros and cons, and at times completely at opposite ends. So we can kind of talk about weather data, for example. And with weather data, whether you're in a flood zone or not is relatively straight, with the exception of happens if you have a large plot? You insure golf and country clubs. And the flood data focus on where the bill is located. But as you can imagine, there are also other risks for flood.
Yeah.
There's risks for the golf carts flooding. And therefore, as you start to, there's an in telling me that this isn't in a flood zone, but the data is also focused on one portion of one parcel of the lot. And so we have to look at that and say, okay, this data isn't as type of risk as another data set. Part of it is trial and error. Part of it is maybe looking at a regression model, something correlation between this data that we have, this set and that data set, and our loss data. Some of it is, underwriters after a period of time and data analysts within the insurance industry after a period of time say, wait a minute, something may not be as accurate as we would like. And that's why if we all utilize the same data, I think, there's 6, 7 data providers that provide quite a bit of data to us. And if we run the same report, we're going to come up with different data. But the key is to say, is it significantly different enough with it?
Yeah.
Or are they close enough that even the differences are acceptable normal range? And part of that is what I'm going to call, part of it is zip code based, part of it may be city based, and part of it may actually be street or physical location based. So you have to recognize the data that you have, how granular is it, how granular did you want it? Hail or tornadoes. How many times have we looked at a tornado and we see it cut through a neighborhood and the one house in the middle destroyed, the 2 houses right next door are not?
Yeah.
I mean, can we really say that the 2 right next door are that much of a better risk? You can't control weather. So you got to be able to sort of say, this needs to make sense. And so the discrepancy, that's where we can say, all right, how much of a data discrepancy is it, and what do we want to do with it? Are we concerned with it?
Yeah.
Yay or nay? Is the Yelp review better than the Facebook review?
Yeah.
And that's where currently we may have to use what I'm going to call versus
a dangerous topic nowadays, but yeah.
Correct. Versus a data-driven. The Yelp review is worth 100% and the Facebook 5%.
Yeah.
Okay. That's that. If that's your model, we can be consistent, and that's the difficulty with consistency is that we know that if I go to the building department and ask, they may tell me 1955.
Yeah.
And if I go to the town, they're going to tell me. And if I go online, they might tell me 1954. Significantly different, but it can be. And we want to make sure, as over time, that we'll start to learn and utilize what we think is accurate from one data set and continue on that path to build our own data integrated system that sort of understands what most accurate system.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, I foreshadowed it, get talking about all these different weather conditions, and we had a chilly start talking about your. I'm interested to move the conversation towards wildfires, and I know when we caught up ahead of this episode and we were chatting through potential topics, you explained some really interesting to wildfires, and I wondered if you could just talk the audience through the changes that you're seeing.
Sure. So it's no secret that while the western portion of the United States and have occurred at a more frequent basis and across the world, and so the question is, we say, there's reasons. What are some things that we can talk? When we talk about data from a wildfire, the question is, obviously it happened. There's a cause and effect. And what is the cause of a wildfire? Yeah. You can sort of break it down and say, we can break it down into 5 basic groups, I guess we could say. We could call it, the first one is sort of how much brush is there? How much there has to go to a wildfire. You think about, you typically don't see a wildfire, there's nothing to burn. So you need a fuel. And that fuel becomes based on weather. Let's say drought could make that brush drier, which burns easier. If you've ever had a campfire, you know that if you put some green in there, you're going to get smoke. It's wet, it's moist. And if you put something super dry that's been out there, and that leaf is light, it'll blow, it can catch other things. And so you've got this sort of first piece, which is, okay, what's the climate? What's the drought perspective? What's the rain perspective? What's the drought? What is, let's say you're on a mountain, and one side of the mountain is on the south, one side of the mountain is on the north side.
Yeah.
So the south side is more sun here in our portion of the country. So that south side dry quicker. Mm-hmm. So if you mix a level on the south side with a potential for something with some sort of, you've got the fuel, chances are the south side is going to burn quicker than the north side. So you've got that piece. The next one is not man-made, I should say, human contact. So a wildfire can start as of lightning. Weather related, we don't know. A certain tree was hit, and we can probably predict some of that.
Yeah.
With some of our weather data that we're collecting. The second one is someone smoking. They're driving down the street, they throw their butt out the window, and we have a wildfire issue.
Yeah.
Been caught. It was dry. It could be a gender reveal. We saw that last year.
Yeah.
People are, the YouTube, TikTok sensation of making it biggest, baddest, most exciting gender reveal party. So let's light in an open field with trees. We're going to do it. You've got that.
I mean, how do you can't, I mean, as you say, that the real challenge there is with lightning, you can kind of predict storm seasons, and you've got some sort of historic data sort of thing. Like a gender reveal party, there's not a way surely to predict that, because you events, certain event venues will have risk assessments and stuff like that, but that was completely ad hoc. It was just some people in a. How do you even go about managing that?
So I think there's a number of ways to manage it. You can't manage that gender but you can manage the amount of brush that's around a building.
Right.
So if we talk about Napa and Sonoma and you know the current wildfires that were happening earlier this year, those wildfires, a beautiful lush neighborhood with beautiful trees all over, and trees over, and there's no breakage between where your tree house starts. So if we take a building, for example, we know that because of the amount of brush and the amount of drought in your neighborhood and the wildfire risk assessment score that we've been able to put together on water out, distance, west versus east, we'll probably need 200 feet of between where the brush ends and your building is. So if we pull up a Google example and we see trees are right on top of your home, even though we can't control the gender reveal party, we can your house. We can control that accelerant. We know that there is. We don't know what is going to be that shock, that spark that sets it off. But we know that if something does set, you know, we're going to lose 500 acres or 10,000 acres. So we sort of have to say, okay, we can't predict what's going to cause the wildfire, or we can wildfire is going to be caused by lightning. A certain amount are going to be caused by electrical wires. A certain amount are going to be caused, hopefully not. A certain amount are going to be caused by smoking. Again, hopefully not. We know if something starts, the probability that this home will burn down if something starts within a mile, within 5 miles. And so that's what we have to take a look at.
So it's less about spark of why it happened, but then whatever reason, the risk that's then in place for that. Now, I'm keen to get in a discussion here, Dan, and I titled this session putting the science back into data science, because there's a lot of scientific knowledge and research and exploration being done into this, more than the heightened awareness of the last year that we've had. Are you doing to collect further data to understand these risks? I know you're hinting towards aerial.
Absolutely. So, you know, we sort of hit on it a little earlier, but one of the things that's important is we've got these data sets. We've got 25, 30 data sets. Question is, how much web scraping can we do to collect some data? You know, you think about a website that lists homes for sale. Quite a bit of data on those websites. And that data can easily be scraped. When we can easily build that says, hey, at 120, any town, California, USA, pull that, we're able to pull up okay amount of data. We're able to take a picture of what's there. So we unstructured data and make some determination. You know, the idea of both the aerial imagery as well as the drive-by was when I spent a little more time on the day-to-day underwriting. One of the things I had my staff do was pull up the Google Maps. And reason being is that, for example, things well and just have a street view.
Yeah.
And that you can actually go back and see what that place looked like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
8 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago.
I mean, we've all looked at our own address on Google to see how it's changed. Yeah.
At that, that data collect. We can collect some of that. Image recognition. There's more and more opportunity to create image recognition. I always talk, if I take a picture of my office and I load it up to any websites, it's going to tell you that I have a computer here, or I might have a can of monitor. It may not be able to pick up everything.
Yeah.
But it is telling me what's there. So utilizing that unstructured image, running it through some sort of data recognition, image recognition, what type of risk we might see, allows us to a new data set on our own. So we've got this external data that we can actually get in a, I'm going to call your typical rows and columns spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
And then have your unstructured data that we can turn column spreadsheets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that we have those two data sets, as well as our application, which if we've been putting into our system, again, into rows and columns and spreadsheets, we now have a complete data set with what our customers are providing us, what claims may have provided us information, what we're able to collect from any of our web scrapers, as well as external data sources. And now, instead of having traditionally 15, 20, 50, 100, 200 pieces of data, I have 15,000, 20,000, because we have a little bit more information. Say, wait a minute, that tree is leaning to the left. There's a good chance that that tree is going to fall. We can sort of do that. So for a homeowner, we pulled up your image on that tree looks like it's rotting. We're not telling you it's rotting.
Yes.
You may want to have it looked at because our is telling us that is in poor condition.
Yeah.
So that's the data combination of, we're going to pull data from numerous different places. The challenge is actually putting it together. Because if you think about it, there has to be some sort of piece that connects them.
Yeah.
I can have a key to 5 different doors, but if I have 3 different doors in the same house, that makes it a little more what key goes where. Being able to create a standardized data set that says 123 Main Street, Town USA, is related to 123 Street, STREET, instead of abbreviated, is the same. Yeah. And those are things that we sort of work through. We can collect as much data as we want.
Yeah.
Again, we want to avoid data.
Yes. Yeah. It's that balance, isn't it?
Physically, your systems have to be able to, customers, I call it the Geico mentality. Here in the everyone at 25, 30 years has seen the commercials, get a quote, enter less. So mentality that insurance should be quick. And for the most part, it can be. But to do that, we have to both understand how to aggregate that data quickly, sort of not as important or useful to the specific risk, and be able to something that the underwriter can make a decision quickly. Because there's a mentality that it shouldn't be. It should be quick. You want to buy a ring, you go online and you buy a ring. You want to buy a computer, you go online, you pick the one you want.
Yeah.
You go to insurance, wait a minute, I can only get right now for commercial, I only be able to quote from one company, and then I have to go to 3 or 4 other 5 other companies.
Yeah.
This is is cumbersome. So one of the things we'd like to do is make sure that that's not cumbersome. And so the more data that we can aggregate allows us to request slightly less data from our agents and our customers, which provide them a sense of, hey, this team has the ability to do what I'm expecting.
Super. We are so nearly running out of time here, Dan. So I want to ask you one last question, which is, if you could give a piece of data scientists to guide them over the next 12 months in 2021, what would that piece of advice be?
I think from a data science perspective, being able to logically understand the coding and development factor is really important. I think understanding the logic behind it is really where you will thrive, and being able to from a simplistic standpoint to explain. You know, it's great that we can talk about models and SVM and PCA and 900 different neural networks that are available to design things, but ultimately you have to be able to explain to someone who's not a data person.
Yeah.
The second piece I would sort of put out there is spend some time not only as a data person, but in the field that you're interested in. One of the things that we run data people that understand data but don't understand the business aspect of it. You need to understand that customers don't tell them that the model says that you're going to buy it. So take some time and say, okay, what is the data tells me this, but my customers are really telling me.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to be and say, I understand that it's telling me that this customer is a good fit. Something here is not a good fit.
Yeah.
And maybe to amend what I'm doing.
Super.
And so that's my advice to the data science community is take a step back and say, I know the data is telling me this, but does it make sense?
Well, Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. Thank you so much for giving me some of your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Chat soon.
Bye.
Well, there we go. Certainly a very interesting episode, to say the least. From Vadex, there does seem to be a plethora of reasons Wildfire how important it is for the data science teams to really keep up with the latest data on offer to them, to really help predict risk and model that the business's revenue is protected as best as possible in certain times. As always, make sure that you are subscribed to the Business of Data, all of our content, as well as following us on socials to keep up with your fellow thought leaders and engage with them in the comment sections, sharing to their networks, and all the rest. Until next time, stay safe and we'll see you real soon.